So the next step for us is going to be to create a series of 5 prototypes. So I'm going to ask you to do 5 different versions where you're changing either the number of panels that you're folding, the termination point or method, whether or not it's a rotated one or if it's just translated in space on the XY plane like we did here. Or it could just project down, or you could project both points down and terminate it that way. It's up to you. I want 5 different versions, but what I need to show you first is how do you bring it out into Rhino, right? So I showed you that before. I'm going to show you a little bit about assigning layers. It's not going to be super in-depth because we're going to go into it a little bit more in-depth later. But we're going to push them out into Rhino. We're going to bake them, all 5 of them, individually, one after another, and then we're going to unroll them so that they lay flat because we're going to pick one to use for laser cutting. Okay?
I hope you make a video of that.
Of what? The laser cutting?
What you're about to do.
Oh, yeah, no, it's easy. It's easy. So it's actually really easy now that I have this stuff already constructed because I could just like swap them out really easily and just start changing things. So the first thing that I want to do actually is go back into Rhino. I know this is a rarity with me, right? So go back into Rhino. We have a bunch of layers, right? So I don't know if yours came up as defaulting to 5 different layers, but mine did. If yours didn't, then go ahead and create 5 different layers. I know that you know how to do that. Jeff went through that with you before. So we're going to actually create 5 different layers. And you don't really need to know much here, you guys. What you do need to know is how to get all of your geometry in one place. And there are easy ways to do it. I'm going to give you the basic way to do it, and there are very clever and complex ways to do it. But the basic way is to just grab them all and connect them to one particular component. So remember I mentioned that I've got the basic geometry stuff that geometry creation, I put it up in the top corner. I do the same thing, but for baking geometry if it's a very simple definition. And it looks like this. So I'm going to go to params, and I know that all of these are just surfaces, but generally I can do a catch-all and say geometry. And I'm going to call this one bake. And there are like buttons and stuff you can do to bake each one individually, but this one's just going to be easy for me to reference. So now I'm going to do the same kind of wireless connection thing, but I'm going to do it backwards. So I'm going to go like that, and I'm going to take this one and I'm going to say wire display hidden. And I can just go like this. So notice how when I pull it out to the side, it gives me that little crazy, like wild wire wrapping back onto itself thing. That's why I just hide it. It's just an easy little catch-all. So I need to bake the surfaces. So that's why my geometry, the surfaces themselves, were created but not used, right? Notice how every single time I had this loft over here that was just kind of sitting there. That's the one I'm going to use to bake. So I'll pull this over here, and I will plug that in.
Can I see a connection for baking?
It's just another bake right there. Do you understand? It's the yeah, so it's just this. I made a wireless connection from one to the next, except I did not take this one, right? I didn't take that one out. I took the first one out because it's going to collect and feed backwards now. Don't worry, there are other ways of doing this too. I'm just showing you a simple way. So I plug bake in there. I can make a copy. I'm sorry, no, don't make a copy of that. Make a copy of oh, I forget my workflow for that. I think I remember. When I was doing it this way, I just made a couple copies back here. So I did that, and I said copy, paste, 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 and I just feed them in. Again, there are smarter ways of doing this. I'm just giving you the quick one. Wait, what? Oh, shoot. Sorry. I did it wrong. You gotta hold shift. Alright. So you should only have 3. You might have 4, but you can just take one of these to each one of your definitions. So I got one there, I've got one here, and I've got one that's going to be all the way over here. So this one feeds into that, this one will feed into that, and this one will feed into that. So now when I select this bake, it selects all of that geometry. So I essentially could technically turn everything that I've created here off, even this, off, and what I see is my completed form right here. Yes? Yes. Thank you. So I'll go through that again so that you can see it in a little bit more clarity. So I used geometry because geometry will catch any geometry that's created. It doesn't matter what type. It'll just take it. So I used geometry. I called it bake. And the key really is your method and foresight for knowing how many connections to make. So I did it sort of as a backward wireless connection, and I connected these two like this, and I made that wireless. Am I still going too fast for you? Or you got it? So this connected to that, it's wireless. So then to make a few of them, I made a mistake and I just did copy, paste, 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 and then those weren't connected. So what you want to do is just copy, paste, and then hold shift and put it in. So that way you've got both of them connected, and you can just carry them out to collect. This is kind of like amateur hour, but it's the easiest one to remember, I think. So now I've got a bunch of them. They're all connected. This one's going to stay as my collector. And so I'm just going to bring these out and connect the surfaces that I've created. Okay? So I can bring them, see here, if you follow and trace them down, it's hard to see, but you know, the bake collector's up here, and I just pull each one out to where I had the loft, the surface that I actually created.
So we need 2 of them?
3. Or, well, I'll say you'll need as many of them as you have surfaces, because we created each surface individually.
And if we want, it doesn't matter whatever new plane that we make. The only thing we have to do is just plug in the previous plane into. We just have to make sure that they're synced up. So it doesn't matter how many different number of planes that we have. We just have to make sure that one of the connections is plugged into the previous plane. So I think it's locked.
No. So these lofts do not have a relationship to one another. If you follow this through, right, the oblique curve is the only one that feeds down into the next surface. This loft goes nowhere. I put that loft there, A, because I wanted to see the surface I was making, and B, because I wanted to use that surface to bake into an actual physical surface in Rhino later. you would do curve. Well, it depends. You could, but like I was saying to Nafi, if you use the reason I used curves to rotate, and I'll draw it on the board here. The reason I use curves to rotate is because if I create a surface like that, right? It has a rotator here, a rotator there, and then I want to create another one. Call it one that goes out this way, right? The relationship of this surface to that surface is not a rotational relationship of a surface. Because if I rotate the surface, then that turns this into an axis of symmetry, which means the resultant surface is going to look like this. Do you understand why?
I'd love for us to
That line is the rotating the first line that you drew?
If you rotate the surface instead of rotating a curve and then rotating the curve in an oblique angle again,
Right.
then what you're going to get is a mirror of the same surface. Doesn't matter if it's flat or if it's at an angle, it's still a mirror, which means it's an axis of symmetry.
Okay.
So if you want each surface to be different, then you would want to construct it off of curves and then use your loft surfaces as a byproduct later.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop the video here, and like I said, I want to try and get. We don't have time to get 5 of these. Let's make it 3. Okay, so well, I don't know. If you can get 5, get 5. If you can only get 3, get 3.
3 what?
Yeah,
1, 3, 5.
Yeah, we're gonna have to bake it out. Sorry, I need to do that. So basically, sorry, you guys keep asking me questions. They're good questions, but I get lost. All right, so after you do this, the baking part is so easy, right? All of those surfaces exist right there. All you have to do is right-click it, go to Bake. By the way, I don't know why they chose an egg for the term bake, because you don't bake eggs, right? So anyway, all you have to do is just pick the surface that it's going to. And then it'll assign that version. It'll bake it out into that particular, did I say surface? Pick the surface it's going to? Pick the layer it's going to. My bad. Working in Grasshopper too much. Okay, so now you see it actually created that, that surface. So if I turn this off, you'll see the geometry in Rhino. There you go. So the geometry here is in Rhino. So the very quick and easy way of doing this, it becomes so easy, right? So I'll do them all really fast. I grab those and I pull it off to the side. So you just grab the surfaces and pull it off. Then I can go back to all of these sliders, right? So let me turn the bake on so I can see what I'm doing. Turn this on. Go in here and I can just start playing with the sliders. So I change my rotation angle here, change my amplitude there. I can play around with what the degrees is for the second surface rotation.
So that's how you want us to make your iterations, just playing
Yep.
with angles? And
Yep, play around with it. I can make this one really short and then turn my angle down or up. Okay, so that would be another iteration, right? I can keep playing around with that. Then I do the same thing. I go back to Bake, and I go to Layer 2, hit OK. Okay, so now I've got it living in Rhino. I pull it out. There we go. Okay, so I want to see 5 iterations of this, and I want you to kind of play around mostly with, it's probably more interesting for you to play around with the triangle at the end, because the rest of it isn't like super exciting. But the triangle kind of is. So let's do that. I want to see 5 iterations if you can get them done by the end of class today. If you're still working on the definition, then you might only get 3. But try to get them out because we're going to use this to laser cut. It looks like we probably won't be able to do the pattern in time to laser cut tomorrow, so maybe we'll do it next week. Are there any questions?